Howdy folks, this is Justro at Metcalf Mills. I've got a real treat for you today, or at least it is to me. We're visiting the Anderson farm real close to where I live here. This is one of the oldest and to me a historic treasure, and I want to give a special thank you to Miss Anderson for allowing me to film and talk about this. You can see back here in the back, you can see the big barn, the little barn, the corn crib, and the little, I guess it was a smokehouse to this side of me right here. But the big house is right behind these trees right here. And I'm gonna go over and talk about the barn and show you some details of that. We're gonna have a lot of fun. I hope you enjoy it. Folks, this is gonna be the first video in a little series that I'm starting. Barns and buildings in my community right here in Appalachia. I'm going to share that with you. I think you'll really enjoy it. Now, this won't be a schedule like on a weekly schedule. It'll just be kind of whenever. But there's a lot more of them coming as we go through. And it'll be something different for you. And I hope you really enjoy it. This is one of probably the oldest places around here besides my family. And this is the Anderson house on Paint Fork Road. And Miss Anderson told me that this house was built around 1888 or 1890. Now this was the new house. Miss Anderson also told me that this building was part of the old original house. This building was built from the old original log house. And I don't know how old that is. It may be 200 years old. I don't know. But you can see these notches in this log. That tells me that it was a two-story log house, because that is where the floor joist set in for the upstairs floor. And there's some other telltale signs here. You can see, if you see that hole drilled in that log right there, and also right over here is another one. Let's see, right there. If you can see that hole drilled in the end of that log, what that was is a lot of times on their log houses, they would drill holes and drive big pegs in to hang stuff up on the outside. And right there's another one beside that door there. So that's what that's for. And this door right here has always intrigued me. It's got some workings in here. You can see where there was a keyhole. And it's got wood on the outside of it. And I would just love to see how this thing worked. I know it was blacksmith made, because you can see these, I'm pretty sure it was blacksmith made, but you can see all the nails here holding it on. They've been hammered out on an anvil because of the shape of them. You can see they've been headed and the way they're made. See there? But I would love to know more about this little lock mechanism on this door. And right here, I'll tell you right now, these hinges right here was hammered out on an anvil. See that nice little decorative end on it there? Come up here and just folded it up, made them around, kind of like a bolt to go in there. That may be off the original old house, who knows, but that's old. I wouldn't think that door latch would be on the original old house, but I could be wrong. I would have think it'd have been more crude than that. They might have put that on when they built this building the first time. Surprised it have two doors. I figured it'd just have one door. And on this top log, you can see right here, these notches, I don't know if you can tell, but they were pegged in. See that hole? And right there's part of a peg sticking out of that one. What that is, that log is actually upside down. It would have been turned the other way. Those would have been on top. And what that was is the log, the hewed rafters, you can see that rafter sitting there, the hewed rafters on the old house set right in there, and they were pinned with a peg to hold them on. And I can see pegs in all of them out through there. So that's what that's for. Very, very interesting. Another door opening on this side of the building. I don't know if that one was original to the house or they made it later. But you can see up here at the top, some of these logs are pieced. They're two pieces. Down here out of the sun so you can see better. See there? They joint pieced them logs together. And then right on this log, you can see that was either a door opening or a window opening on the old house. You can tell there, and there's a notch for something and two pegs. That's interesting. I'd like to know what went there. But it's pretty common. Same thing on one of our old homesteads. They took the old house down and used it in the barn. Now right here, on each side of this door, Miss Anderson told me these V notches right here was a place to get a rifle barrel out to defend their homestead and their house from whatever. It's a place to get a rifle barrel. Stick a rifle barrel out there. So I thought that was really interesting. Really interesting. And down here on this corner, you can see that them logs have been pieced all the way up through there. And there's more holes that they've bored in there for pegs to hang something on. And then same thing up here on the top log with the rafters being pegged in. That's a lock and notch. It's hard to tell. The way they step those notches there, it locks the rafter in. I don't know if you can tell that, but can you see? It's let's see, let me find it here. It's a step notch, and the purpose of that is right in that step there, the rafter is pushing on the log so that it can't slip and the roof fall. And then it's got that peg holding it down. See that peg? That's how that works. And then over here's your second story floor joist notch log. But I tell you, this is really, really a piece of historic treasure to me. Now for the big barn over here, a lot of the old barns is closed in with this lattice work. And I've thought about that for years, and I'm going to show you some other old barns. But to me, that lattice work, when you stack lumber, you have little small strips like that. A bunch of them, because you have to stack that lumber on strips so it'll dry out. Well, on some of the barns, I noticed this lattice strips, they're different widths. And I've thought about it, and I looked at all of them, and they're usually short in length. These right here are short in length. You can see where they've pieced them. See right there? They're pieced in a short length, and it looks like they would have been maybe 4 or 5 foot long, and that's just the size that you'd stack a lumber pack. So what I've decided is this lattice strips, that was the stripping that they used to stack their lumber for the barn. And they utilized all them strips to lattice in their barn loft so it could get plenty of airflow so they could dry hay and grain and whatever they needed to up there. All the old barns was log bottom barns. The floor joists come out to make a shed on the outside, and you can see these logs for this floor joist, they're just half hewed. They didn't hew two sides of them. The top and the bottom are hewed so they'd be the same thickness so that the floor would come out and work out, you know, plain true. And you can see the hack marks where they hewed them out. And they just about always cantilevered that logs out like that, the floor joist, for a shed. And then the main support for the barn was hewed out logs which formed their stalls downstairs. And then over here they had a little room, most likely a casing house for working backer later on. This was built way before they was raising backer in here, but it's usually open back through there on the back, and you can kind of they usually all had an old rock wall here down the back side like that. And then there's their benches for grading their backer. They'd stack their backer leaves between these pegs when they was working it. Just about all the old barns built next to a bank had a back hallway like this. And they's probably stored a lot of crops and stuff like that in here. Usually they go down and they have another door opening down there. I can't tell. I don't think it does. I think it just goes down there and ends, but it always stays real cool back in here. These rocks, and it's closed in. Always a bunch of nails drove up to hang stuff on. Got a big shelf up here to put stuff on. A nesting box here for the chickens to nest in. And one of my favorite things on these old barns, every one of them has got different kind of stall latches. You can see how that one works right there. And you know, they've been here over 100 years and they're still working good. See this fancy woodwork? That's my kind of stuff right there. That's my kind of thing right there. See there, it's just a slide latch in there. Got a little handle. Keep the stock in the stall. Everything's notched in real nice and tight. Right over the beam for the weight bearing part. Pegs gone out of this latch. Still works like a charm. Peg still in this one. A lot of times these old hinges right here was blacksmith made. I can't tell if them was or not, but they look like it. They might have been store-bought, but most likely blacksmith made. Latch works perfect. You can see how the stalls was. You got their manger here and their feed box to feed their animals. And upstairs they had holes in the floor. They could drop the hay down right into the manger. Some of the old barns for this manger trough, they've got a holler log, a bottom half of a holler log. It's rounded, and then they built their manger on that. This ain't really a manger. It don't have the slats, but the stock would just stand here and eat the hay out of that trough right there. So you can see how this slide latch works right here. Comes right down there. Everything's mortised and tenon together. It's got nails instead of pegs in this one. This side of the barn right here is kind of deteriorating a little bit and starting to sag down. They put a temporary post in there. And I'll tell you, one reason for that is to do with weather and the sunshine. It's always the case. The side of the building getting the majority of the sunshine and the weather, it always deteriorates first. Right here's the other end of the little casing house back on the back where we looked in. Go up here to the big loft. Had these windows to let light into the casing house part down there. And two, all the old barns, they had a different pattern, different ways of doing stuff. This one's got probably more lattice than any barn around it I've ever seen. And the reason for that being, I don't know what the timeline was that they built the house over here, but it could have been all these stacking strips was leftover lumber from the house. So that's a possibility too. These old doors is getting a little soft and saggy from the weather. Floor you can tell is weathered here at the door quite a bit. But right here, these brackets here, standards to hold a bar up over this door for some reason. I don't know why they would have done that. I'll have to think about it, but most all the barns, they had a timber frame. You can see this main post here going up, and then they had posts. All these poles right here, these tier poles, these round poles, they was not original to this structure. They didn't put all these in here until they started growing backer for a cash crop. And when they done that, that's when all the big barns got tier poles in them. They'd hang that backer in here and let it cure out. There's all the backer sticks. But this timber frame, I was going to tell you, it was just the timber frame. Not these round poles wasn't in here. And that left the whole big barn loft to be open. And they put big braces from the outside wall down to the first post of the timber frame, and that really braced the building so it can never give, never fall. And right here's one of the doors that goes to a stall downstairs. It's packed in there too tight to open, but they could open these doors on the floor and drop a hay right down to their stock in the stalls. They was real smart about everything they done. It's well thought out, and they brought the knowledge with them. They was smart about building. I mean, they weren't no engineers or nobody like that. They was their own engineer, and I kind of understand that. There's another center brace here going the opposite way from the top of the timber frame to the outside wall. Make it strong, stand the wind, never waver. You can see they've nailed these little ladder boards on here for rungs going up this post. I don't know if they done that when they started working backer, or if they done that when they built the building to have a little ladder to get up and down to work off of. It's right at the back wall, so that makes me wonder. Something else is when this thing was originally built, you see all this lathing for under the metal roof. Well, the reason they've got so much of that's when this thing was built original, it had wooden shingles or boards, split out oak boards or shingles to cover the barn for the roof. And you know, it preserved it. This thing's over 100 years old. And this right here is just exactly how they'd store their hay. They'd stack it in here so it could dry out real nice. This right here is an old backer baler. They'd lay their backer leaves in here. And they had a jack that went right here. You can see how that's bent up in an arch. They put just like a bumper jack there, and they jacked it down and it packed them backer leaves in a bale. They'd, of course, put their strings in first, start stacking the leaves, and when they got it full, got it packed as tight as they could, they'd take them strings and tie them off. And these notches right here in the back, that's where they'd put their string till they got it full, and then they'd fold them back down, tie them off. But I tell you, when they built this stuff, they built it to last, to stand up to the test of time. And the only thing that's ever kept them from doing that is the roof. When the roof gets bad, the barn goes down. And right over here, there's a big old wooden shaft. I don't know if that's out of a loom or what, but man, it's a big old wooden shaft with two wooden gudgeons on each end. Very interesting, very interesting. A lot of people, they don't take care of their barns. I don't know how many barns in my community I've seen go down in my life. And it's sad. I mean, it's really sad. Really sad. Right here, usually they'd have shingles left over when they roofed a barn or a house. And right there's some of your original wooden shingles, I'm sure, off of the barn. They split them out of oak, put them on board fashion. I believe them's used because they're really thin and weathered. That and there's kind of curled up, but they had a time of the moon that they'd make these things and put them on. They'd put them wooden shingles on that roof. That's what I was showing you up there, why that lathing's so close together. They'd shingle the roof like that. You think about splitting out enough shingles to cover a big barn, and they'd cover all the cracks so it couldn't leak, and then the next layer would come down on these so far to where there's no gaps and no holes till it could leak. I mean, that's work. And you know, Danny in our banding the stone video, banding that millstone, Danny and Mike come down. Danny is a big roof shingle maker. He's made a lot of shingles for historic structures, and I'd like to talk to him about that sometime and share it with you, and we'll do that. But he knows a lot. He's experienced a lot about that and knows how to do it and everything. And over here, you can see even more wooden shingles. See all them stacked up there? I bet them's all original. Some of them, they may not have been used. If one got bad or something, they could go up there and they could put, you know, they had dry shingles on hand to replace it with. So we'll go back out here. Close the door back here. Beautiful historic structure here. Now over here, of course, is the big corn crib. If you watch my channel, you know quite a bit about the old corn cribs. I got a video on it. Check it out if you ain't already. This one don't have a hardware cloth. It don't have the rat wire to keep the rats out between the cracks, but you can see the two doors up here. Pile their corn under this big shed here in piles and have a corn shucking. The community would come together. They'd sit around here in chairs and shuck corn, and as they shucked it, they'd throw it up in that hole right up there into the crib. There ain't no telling how many bushels of corn has went through this. Some of the fancier cribs, they had a little place you could open up here. And right in here, these doors, well, that's where they got their corn out. They'd come in here and get their corn out. And it also made it easier to secure their corn so nothing or nobody didn't steal it. They could put them a lock on there and their crib was locked up. That wasn't a big problem because everybody's house was open and everything else back in, but some people did, some people didn't. But this is a way of life, and it's really wonderful. And I hope that I can preserve some of it doing this. It's a beautiful place right here close to where I live. Big barn up here. Little barn here built out of the old house. What a nice place. Boy, oh boy, what a treasure. Folks, I got a little snippet of history here for you that Aunt Ruby shared with me. If you've been watching my channel long, you know who Aunt Ruby is. She's the lady that saved my dad's life when he was a stillborn baby. You need to go back and check that video out. This bottom right here behind me is part of this Anderson farm where I'm at. And the house down here, and I guess the barn too, all that was built by Nelson Anderson. And his son was Oscar. He's the old man that lived here when I was growing up. And then his son, Junior, lived here after that. And Miss Anderson that I got permission from, that was Junior's wife. So what I wanted to tell you about this, the old timers, they always thought it was good to plow a snow under. So when it would snow, if they could, they'd get their turning plow out and plow that snow under. They thought it made the ground soft. Well, Aunt Ruby told me that Nelson Anderson was down in this bottom behind me right here, plowing a snow under, and he got his feet wet, and he took pneumonia, and that's what killed him. So, that's the story Aunt Ruby shared with me. Down here in this bottom, plowing the snow under. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this video, the Anderson Homestead. I sure did enjoy sharing it with you. If you did, give me a like. Subscribe if you ain't already. Hit that notification bell I think it's beside the channel name there. Leave me a comment and let me know what you think about this. This is Justro at Metcalf Mills. I look forward to sharing more barns in my community with you in the future. See you next time.